And now I will invite to the stage Julien Faraut, the director of the film. Okay, Julien, first of all, I will just start with the basic question. So, you work at the French National Institute of Sports, in the archive there. And could you tell us how you came upon this story and how this developed slowly into, you deciding to do a film about the team?
Well, I came across to the story of the witches through archives, through a footage. Never heard of the witches before. A former volleyball player and trainer came to me more than 10 years ago at the Cinematheque of the French Sport Institute, and he brought 60mm instructional film made by the Japanese after the Olympic Games of 1964. So we watched together this film, and I was really impressed and stunned by what I saw. This training session, this training regime, which was very far from the standard of that time. No matter it was men or women, nobody trained that harsh, and it was very close to a more contemporary volume and type of training. But it also reminded me very swiftly to the anime I used to watch when I was a kid in France, and I was very surprised because this anime was very, very popular in France, but nobody knows that it was inspired by a true story. And when I watched the footage, it was so close to what I have in mind. It was like a revelation. It was impossible. So I started some research, and I discovered that obviously the anime was inspired by a true story by the witches of the Orient. And the more I knew about them, the more my desire to make a film on them increased. So that's how all it started.
You used in your film a lot of archival footage as well as anime, but also you went to Japan and you met the players. Could you tell a bit about this process of, first having the archive, then the anime, and what was your decision when you decided that, you have to have the testimonies of the women as well, for them to tell their own story?
I have too much love and respect for cinema to think of for each film, for each topic, we have to find the proper way to tell the story, for the form of the film. And this time, when I started reading articles and papers written by journalists or academics, I didn't find anywhere the players' testimony. They were not telling us what they have in mind, and the Western journalists and academics were just pretending to speak in the name of the players, in the name of the women dignity or freedom, emancipation, and obviously they were not aware of the high-level athletes' reality. High-level athletes, women, are not the regular women. They are very strong-willed people, and they choose to work that hard, but it was not obvious for them. And because in our times, when we have to read our newspaper and discover another sordid and horrible story about harassment and sexually abused in sports. And of course, we have to protect the victims from mistreatment. I thought that the main public has to know that high-level athletes, they have to bear some unbearable for everybody, for the men. You know, high-level sports is not the way you do sports for fun, for your health, for your own pleasure. Those people are different. I think we have to consider high-level athletes through the eyes of an anthropologist. They are not everyday people. They are not. They are special. They are different. So I thought, for the first time, I feel a need to get their testimony, and because the subject, the topic was maybe too touchy, I want them to tell the story, to tell us that their journey and their relationship with their trainer, the so-called demon coach. So it was a real, very important for me to get this this testimony, the fact that to give them the opportunity to tell their story by themselves. And after I had this, I try to edit a film with a kind of multi-layered aspect, and because the subject, their story through in this post-war Japanese reconstruction and recovering from the World War, everything was so interweaved that I thought that the film has to be also multi-layered and to interweave many different sources, such as footage, shooting, anime, and to create this this mixture, because it was so interweaved, and we have the anime were so popular everywhere, in France, in Italy, in Japan for sure, that I really love the fact that it's a long chain of inspiration. The very first manga and anime, Attack Number 1, was inspired by this true story. And then because Attack Number 1 was very popular, in Japan many spin-off came out, and then we have players that was inspired not by the Witches of the Orient, but by the anime. And to name only one of the best volleyball player in Italy, she told to the press in Italy that she started to play volleyball after watching a manga, an anime on TV. So everything was mixed up. So I chose to add more confusion to the confusion.
So when you decided to contact them, did they respond quickly? How long did it last for you to get in touch with them? And what was your initial meeting with them, and how did this evolve in the sense of, were they willing to talk? How much time did you spend with them?
It was not an easy task, because I started from scratch. I have no contact with them first. So it took us almost 1 year to geolocalize them. And then we were in touch with one player, and then the other, they just contact them. It's like nowadays in every team, some players are more close to another one. It was mainly generation, the younger were much closer than the older one. And I knew from the start that I have to face two main issues. I don't speak a word of Japanese, and those women also belong to a generation that I don't belong to. So I started to work with a famous French translator called Catherine Cadou. She worked with many French crew in Japan and many Japanese crew in France. She was, for instance, she worked with Akira Kurosawa on Ran, which was co-produced by the French. And Catherine is 74, so she has the exact same age as the youngest witch. And she used to live in Japan, so she knows not only to speak Japanese, but also the right way to approach people and to be polite and to create a relationship and a feeling of trust. So Catherine was really helpful, and for many weeks she started explaining my project. And the players, they were and they are still quite familiar with press requests and interviews. NHK, the national Japanese television, made many subject and topics about them, but they were not familiar with a deeper approach with more time and with more interest. So I guess there was maybe a surprise why a French filmmaker want to cover maybe a subject that the Japanese think of a very, not for foreigners, very Japanese topic. So they were maybe a bit surprised, but also they were, I think, pleased to be in the middle of this feature documentary. So we met for the first time in June 2019. And usually in documentaries, filmmakers spend a long time with their characters, subject. It's very immersive, and they spend weeks or months, sometimes years, with their subject. I spent only 1 day because it was for many reasons. Of course, because it is a low-budget film, but also because I choose to tell a collective story in a collective way, and not to focus on one player in particular. So we have to meet several players. We met 4 players deeply, and 5 at the end with the lunch sequence. So it was quite short, but there was a long preparation for it, and Catherine really get in touch and keep in touch with them. So I also decided to, for our first meeting, to come only with audio recorders and a microphone and no camera, because I was thinking it was too much for our first meeting. They welcomed us at their home, and in Japan, a Latin country, you don't usually invite a stranger in your private place. And when you come with a camera, with lighting, and it's sometimes too much. So I was really keen on not bothering them and be as polite as I can. And I think it's also easier for them to speak with only a microphone put on the table, not on themselves, not on them, because it's sometimes too much. Also, like when you put a microphone on you, just so we did. I think it was appreciated the way we behave, and so I went back to France. Catherine translates all the audio recordings, and I choose to take some excerpt of every testimony and build a voiceover, which was quite unusual because the standard for documentary, maybe more TV-like documentaries, is you found footage about a subject you already know. And even if the footage is not saying what you have in mind, you do your best to change the footage, and you already know what you want to tell. And in my case, it was the opposite. I just want to discover it. I was just want to discover my own film. So I didn't know the content of my voiceover because I choose to give the players the opportunity to tell the story. So I discovered many things. I discovered the nicknames. I discovered Daruma, source of inspiration for their kite and receive. And then when I had this voiceover, I continue to do this process by asking the players I want them to choose the location of their shooting. My aim was at portraying them, so I tell them, well, where would you be pleased to be filmed? And two of them were very sure of. Chiba-san was very pleased to be shot in her gym club because she was very proud of lifting some loads. And Shinozaki-san was also very keen on showing us her training session because she trained for what they called in Japan the Mama-san League, the leagues for old people. And for the two others, it was less obvious, so we talked about it. And Tanida-san, when we met her, she lived with her daughters, and she take after her granddaughters. So we decided to shoot the sequence with their granddaughters. And each time we choose the location, I also want to match the location with the voiceover. So I asked Tanida to recall some past event, and she's playing a memory card game, which I offered her. And Kanda-san is telling about the story of the European tour, and she told us that she watched landscapes through windows because they just have to play games and not spend so much time to visit and to make the tourist tour. So we shot her on our way back after the lunch sequence. We just bring her back to her home, And for Chiba and Shinozaki, they were talking about the training session or the physical exercise and regime, and they are actually practicing or doing their physical conditioning work. So I work step by step like this, and because the voiceover was made from the testimony, I also want the footage sequence voiceover less, without any voiceover, because I really want the audience to experience that kind of reminding. You have long speech, and sometimes it's even with subtitlings, it could be too much. You have to read many things, so it can be sometimes too long. But it helps you afterwards during the footage sequence to remind what you just learned. And the footage sounds different now because you are aware of something. And just like the players that make this effort to recall, you are reminding yourself what you have just learned. And at the end, with the final, everything is just connecting, and you are more close to the players because you learn, so I hope, many things in the film. And although I watched the film many times, I still cry at the end because it's very moving to watch the players crying. They were so humble, so also strong, that it's very moving for me to watch them crying because they are too proud to cry. And this last sequence is very, very moving for me.
Any questions at this point? You can raise your hand. And
Thank you.
My name is Yanela. I have to say that I really enjoyed your movie because it's kind of personal for me. You mentioned Italy and their obsession with Japanese mangas, but I don't know if you're familiar with this, but also the whole generation of Slovenian girls decided to start playing volleyball because they watched Japanese cartoons inspired by this story, me as well. Because I grew up near Italian border and we watched a lot of Italian television with these cartoons. So yeah, I thank you very much for this bigger picture because I knew just some part of the story, but not the whole story. And I just could watch tonight. I could watch these cartoons that I used to, and we are really crazy about it. And we really want to not just play volleyball, but really train them hard as these characters. And my question is, I'm wondering, I didn't understand well, but are they very close? Still this member of the team, do they meet regularly? Are they friends?
Yeah, actually, so as I already told you, the players, the Captain Kasai passed away less than 10 years ago. She was much older than the others. Then you have a second group in between, composed with Honda-san, Fugu, and Tanida-san, Pai, in the film. And then the youngest one, Shinozaki and Chiba, the one in the gym club and the one that still train. So Chiba and Shinozaki are very close, not because they are the same generation, but also because they lived in Kanto, which is the region of Tokyo, and the other are from Kansai, the Osaka region. So they are very close, for sure. but you have smaller group in the group, as it's always the same in a team sport. And they meet regularly for sometimes press or official meetings, but they also, I think, they meet for. They went to the tomb, to the cemetery of on Kasai, or no, Daimatsu, the trainer also. And I think they like every team sports group that grows and live together, they share very strong bonds, and of course you can't erase it. It's very very strong. It's still the case. And maybe one nice story about during the shooting. I didn't include this dimension because I don't want to it was maybe I think the players would not have liked it. Kasai-san, the captain, was maybe more harsh than the trainer, and they all told me that sometimes Kasai was more rude, and Daimatsu was quite gentle and smooth with them. Although we don't, as Westerners, when you watch the sequence, sometimes you feel embarrassed, and you don't understand properly the relationship between the trainer and the players. But they were all very grateful to the trainer, and from time to time they told me that Kasai was a bit rude because she was quite older. Kasai was like 30 and the youngest was 20, so they were a very young grown-up, and one was almost thinking of having children and not in the same state of their life. But although they told me about this relationship with Kasai, which was not always very friendly, when we shot the lunch sequence, at the end, the crew was packing their things, and I asked Catherine because I can't understand what was going on. But one of the players, Kanda, which wear a red suit, a red jacket, told that it was Kasai-san jacket. So I learned that in Japan there is a custom that when someone passed away, you can give their clothes to their friends and relatives, and people are wearing those clothes. And so Kanda was wearing a Kasai suit, and she was very proud of it. And the other one wants to try it. And they, okay, give me the jacket. And they were very pleased to try the jacket and have the Captain Kasai jacket. They were very... And then Handa-san, another fugu, with like a flower design jacket, said, okay, this is also a Kasai jacket. So the other ones, okay, let's try this one also. So it was very moving because they looked like young teenagers kidding, and we really feel the bonds between them. It was very moving.
Another question? No? So perhaps I was wondering if you can explain to us a bit more about as you said, that the team is very connected, and this team is even more connected because they worked at the same factory, they lived in the same, complex. Could you explain a bit about this system of, this being a team of a specific factory and, not a national team that is brought together from different places, but, how did this work?
Yeah, this is one of the main amazing story I learned from this film. So in Japan, the sports is really connected to cooperation, to industry. So the textile industry, very early, at the beginning of the 20th century, introduced volleyball for their workers and employees, because it was easy to introduce. You have just to build a net. The Japanese used to play not with 6 players, with 9 players. So you can engage, you can have in a very small court 18 people, and it helps you to create a team spirit in your factory, and it's good for their health, mental and physical health. So, and that's why also volleyball in Japan is considered, not considered, but is played by women, because textile factories mainly employed female workers. And then after the Second World War, this big company, they decided to create and to own competitive team to win the Japan title, because they think that it will be a good publicity for their corporate to tell everyone that they are healthy and wealthy company, and they win they are the Japanese champion. So Nichibo was one of the major textile factory, and cotton and textile was one of the major industry in Japan. It was very powerful. So they decided to have this competitive team, and they asked an employee, Hirobumi Daimatsu, which he used to play volleyball, and he was in charge of creating and this best Nichibo team. So he started to gather and to put all the best player of all Nichibo factories in only one factory, located in the south of Osaka, in a little town called Kaizuka. And then he told his chief to the Nichibo headquarters, he said, we have to hire new players, young players. So he went to a tournament of high school and young tournament, and just to watch and find the best players. And he went to the Shitenoji, which is still one of the best high school for volleyball. Shitenoji is really nearby Osaka. And so Nichibo hired these young players, not for their workers' capacity, but for their volleyball skills. And they were gifted, so it was considered as a real social promotion, because those young girls belongs to a labor background, farmers and milk sellers. So their parents, they told us that their parents were really honored that their daughters could be hired in as as employees in a big corporation like Nichibo. So this story is so Japanese, and I was really stunned because it was not usual, even in Japan, that a national team could be not a selection of the best players around the country, but a group of women that lived, worked, and trained together in one place, in one factory, and represent a whole country, Japan. Because at that time, in 1959, the IOC declared that volleyball will be part of the Olympic sports for the next Olympic Games. So many countries started to think of sending their teams in World Championship. And because the Japanese Volleyball Association was not very wealthy, they don't have as much fund as they need to send a national team to Brazil, because in 1960 the World Championship was hosted in Brazil. The Japanese government just asked for Nichibo because it was the best team of the country, if they were okay to send their Nichibo team and represent the whole country. And they were very successful because they only lost in final against the USSR. So they started to have this European tour, a long tour through Europe, and they have to play against the best European team, like Czechoslovakia and Poland, Romania. And so the team, the Nichibo team, became the Japanese national team. So it's quite amazing that they were so successful that there was no reason to change it because they won everything.
Any more questions? Last opportunity, raise your hand. No? So I will ask you, you're definitely still in contact with the players, and have they seen the film already, or are you planning to do a screening with them? And also perhaps what are you expecting from their responses?
No, they haven't seen it yet, because I didn't want to send them a link to watch it on a laptop or on a TV set. So we wait for the right time. As you know, we had a very hard time, and in Japan it was too complex to plan a screening before the Olympics. It was our first plan. So they really look forward to watching the film. They ask regularly to Catherine when they could watch it at last. So we found a Japanese distributor for the screening. So we plan to go to Japan in November. And I know that it would be something very special for us, but also for me, because I'm very grateful to her. I think they gave me so much that I have to give it something back, and I have to give them the film. So it will be for sure very special and very moving to gather and to watch it all together on a big screen in Japan. So finger crossed, in November they will be able to discover what I make about from their testimony, from this shooting. So I really look forward for this moment.
So we keep our fingers crossed for you as well, so it can happen. Thank you so much, Julien, for the film and for talking to me and to the audience. And yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.